What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're taking a look at the Roaring Fire Pioneer Mini Tool Roll, and this is available in this rustic brown that you see in front of you, as well as a mossy green for $39.99 over on the Roaring Fire website, which I will link to in the description of this video. Now, I haven't covered tool rolls quite as extensively as I have pouches on the channel, but they do offer some distinct advantages over pouches, so really good alternative in certain scenarios and can carry quite a bit more than a similar size pouch, which is one of those first advantages. I wanted to show it fully loaded out so you can get an idea of how much it can expand. I will show it empty at the end of the video, and it is significant bit smaller. Now, I wanted to start first though with the exterior of this pouch. So we have a waxed canvas for the main material on this pouch. One of my favorite materials for pouches and bags, just because it's pretty durable, it's water resistant. If you soak it, it will get wet, but water does tend to just bead off of it because of that wax. And then it also patinas over time, similar to a leather pouch or anything like that. And that's not something that's super common with other fabrics. I mean, they do show signs of age, but it doesn't look quite as good. They just look old and raggedy. But with waxed canvas and leather, they start looking better with time. And so really like waxed canvas, and that's going to be the same for that mossy green as well, also going to be in a waxed canvas. Now, this is all held together with, or closed with, this buckle here, and you can see I only looped it through this first section. If you want it to be more secure, you can definitely fold this over, tuck that in, and it's going to be really tight. This allows me to just pull on this and get this open pretty quickly. Now, it depends on how you're going to be storing this. So if you have it in an enclosed space, like a backpack, something like that, this is perfectly fine. It's not going to come undone. But if you're throwing this in your trunk or on a bike or something like that, where it's bumping around, moving around, and has open space to move, then you probably do want to thread it through that buckle just to make sure that it doesn't open up on you. But because this is going to be closed up in a bag for me, it's not as big a deal. Now I'm going to get this opened and we'll take a look at what's inside. Looks like I opened it upside down, so we'll flip that around. And so it does expand to be pretty large once you have it fully unrolled. We're looking at 17.7 inches across, which is 45 centimeters, and 7.87 inches tall, which is 20 centimeters. Whole thing weighs in at 9.2 ounces empty, or 261 grams. And this is where we get to some of those other advantages you have over the pouch. So obviously I already talked about, I think they fit more than your similar size pouches, but they also protect the gear a little bit better. So you can see this flap here, which has storage capacity for additional smaller gear, but it serves another purpose, and that's to keep the gear behind it from really rubbing against each other. So when you close this up and start rolling, all of those pocket clips, all of those parts are protected by this. So as you start rolling, nothing's rubbing up against each other. So if you have like a clamshell open pouch, something like that, it a lot of times faces the gear right in front of each other. So a lot of times I solve that by putting a hank in the middle, and that keeps the gear from rubbing on each other. But this is kind of built-in protection for all of the gear that's behind this flap. And so that's a really nice thing. And the other really nice thing is it kind of serves as a ground cover once you get it opened up. So as you can see, flipping this open, you can set this down on the snow and the dirt, even on like your car, and it's going to protect the car from the gear inside. But setting it down on the ground, it's protecting the gear from whatever's underneath it. And you can use this as a little mini workspace. So if you're disassembling a knife or working on something, you can work right over here. If you drop parts, it lands inside of here, it's not getting lost, and also protecting these from the elements. And so really nice kind of way to not only store a ton of gear, but also protect a bunch of gear. And you can even start seeing a lot of that wear on the interior of this. This is going to happen a lot more dramatically than the exterior for me, since it's going in a backpack, because this, as I'm pulling gear out, putting gear in, rolling it up, it's all rubbing on that wax canvas and starting to leave these marks. And I think it just gives it a lot of character, looks really cool. So we're gonna go through these, pull out all of the gear. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about the gear because there's a lot in here. Really just wanna give an idea of the types of items that can fit in the various pockets. Then we'll measure them out and roll it back up so we can see what it looks like empty. So we do have a zipper pocket on the end. This has a YKK zipper on it, and it's a pretty flat pack pocket. Right now I have a couple Leatherman bit kits in there. And you can see it does go both ways, so you can put gear this way, this way. It's kind of in the middle of that area. And again, we will measure that out in just a bit here. but good for small flat objects. And this is pretty like firm once you load it out. And so if you put something that's longer, the reason the bit kits are nice is because they were side by side, so they can kind of bend. But if you were to put something about this large, that does limit how small and tight you can roll it, because then you have this large flat space that can actually roll. So something to keep in mind when you're loading stuff in there is that these like slimmer, narrow items may be a little bit better if you're going for a more compact roll. Now I'm gonna go through these mesh pockets on the outside first, and these are really great for small items. So this first one, I have a flashlight as well as a level, and then this little curator tray, just good for keeping hardware if you do end up disassembling something in the field. Moving to the next one, we have a folded hank. This is a Gondek EDC knot tying guide hank, really cool and also practical, helpful. And then some of my favorite Grim Workshop tip cards just shoved in there as well. And these are about that width that you can fit credit card size items, so you can put their actual tools in there as well. Moving to the next pocket, we have some whistle, compass, some navigation and signaling. We also have a magnifying glass, which is good for seeing splinters, even starting fires, stuff like that. This one's a Countycom Titan Zoom. And then in the last one, we just have some Band-Aids. Now, this one I do want to note is I put Band-Aids in here because they're flat and they can bend a little bit. I had some larger objects in there, and it did make it a little bit more difficult to close it because it's closer to the end where we're securing that buckle. And so it made it a little bit harder to close it, so I tend to put smaller items in this section. And so flipping that up, we get into our main section. So we had 4 mesh pockets up front. We also have 4 larger pockets here in the back that can really take up all of that 7.87 inches, or I guess about 7.5 inches worth of space. So I have a couple taller items in here, but also some smaller items, and so can work either way. And then in front of that, we have these elastic pockets. We have 4 larger ones and then 4 smaller ones for 8 total. And those are pretty long elastic pockets, nice and secure, but they also do stretch, so you can put thicker items than what I actually even have currently loaded out in there. So starting with the items in the back, in the first larger pocket, we do have the Milwaukee Fastback, nice little utility blade, as well as a bit driver, and so nice option for that. We do have another bit driver option as well. Obviously you saw the Leatherman bit kit. Those will still work in here, so it's kind of going to be down to preference if you want this one. This is nice because you have that 90-degree angle, or you can go full 180 degrees to fully opened, and so have that in the first slot. Moving to the next main slot in the back here, we have a Leatherman Skeletal, and this obviously has a bit driver as well, so can use all of those flat bits from Leatherman, and also has a knife on there, some pliers, and so it gives you a decent bit of versatility and a pretty compact multi-tool overall. Over here we have the Gondek EDC. I forget the name of this pry. I want to say it's a Persuader, but I think that's the one that's more like a Nuck. I'll link in the description to what pry bar this is, but a really cool little pry bar. It's got a little mini hammerhead. Gonna be hard to strike your exact nail if you're using it for nails, but if you're just using it to smash up objects, stuff like that, that works. Then you have this little pry end over here, as well as another one over here with a nail puller. And I believe this is also a 1/4 inch, so in a pinch, if you did need to turn those bits, you can do that as well. And this is just a little bit larger than your standard pry, so if you really need to get in there to something, get a little bit more leverage, it's gonna be a little bit better than your pocket pry tool. So threw that one in there. Moving to the end, I have a Cerberus Knives Riot. This is a small fixed blade from Cerberus Knives in a Topo Kydex sheath, and that fits in there really nicely. So could probably fit a little bit of a larger fixed blade. Some of them do end up a little bit longer than your 7.5 inches or so, and so for like a real outdoor fixed blade, you're pretty limited in terms of size on that, so maybe not the best for putting that one in there. Now, starting with these elastic loops, don't have anything in this first one, but moving on to the second one, we have another one of those Leatherman bit kits, so have all of the bits that Leatherman has to offer, as well as that small screwdriver, glasses screwdriver. And then moving into the next one, this one's probably a little bit slim for here, but just shoved it in there anyway, and this is the Countycom ferro rod, and so you unscrew that, have a little ferro rod in here. Just picked this one up in my last Countycom order, similar to the Exotac one, but significantly cheaper, so nice option there. have the Knipex extra small water cobra pliers and the ratchet kit for that Leatherman bit kit, so you can set that and use that instead of connecting it directly and not having the ratcheting feature. And then some writing instruments, so always like to have stuff to write with. So we have our standard pen from Tactile Turn. This is a full-size bolt action. We also have a Countycom mechanical pencil. And so mechanical pencils are nice because, or any pencils, because they can write places that pens can't, like even on the sidewalk and stuff like that. It's gonna eat through your lead pretty fast, but you can still write on it really nicely. And also can use that graphite as like a bit of a lubricant, a powdered lubricant on your knives. If it's getting caught up, you can put that on the detent track and it will act as a lubricant. And then we have a Sharpie, kind of for the same reasons, can write places that other pens can't. And so this one's from SoulBuilt. This is their Marksmith, and they're coming out with some new versions pretty soon, so definitely stay tuned for that, but I will link to these all as well. Now that we have it all empty though, let's roll it back up and then we'll measure those pockets. But just to give you an idea of exactly how small this can roll, if you saw it in the beginning, it was pretty large, and then now we have a pretty small roll, almost like a pencil case size, and so it does get significantly smaller, and then you can see all of that strap. And so we were only using up to about here on the strap, so we still had another 4 inches or so we could have expanded if we ended up putting thicker gear. Most of what I put in here was actually fairly slim with the exception of the Milwaukee Fastback, and so could have went even bigger, obviously didn't need to, so didn't go that route, but really nice to be able to expand and put exactly what you want. With the pouch, you do have a little bit of expansion, but it's not gonna be as much as this. You're really limited to how far that material stretches, and some of those don't really stretch at all. And so we have this open. Let's get our ruler out and we can start measuring out these pockets. So these mesh pockets are all the same size, about 3 inches in width, and they go about 3.5 inches deep. You can go a little bit longer, and if you don't mind them just kind of sticking out over here, you can go way past this fabric, but I tried to keep everything a little bit shorter. That can make it a little bit uneven, but it usually doesn't, because most of the time your thicker portion up here is gonna be on the bottom, but if you have thicker items on the top and then more on here, it can kind of make it uneven, but for the most part it evens itself out. And so we have 3 of those 3 by 3.5 inch mesh pockets on that flap. We have our YKK segment. This goes to about here. I'm going to measure from the outside since we have space on each side, and so here we're looking at about 3.5 inches as well, and that goes about 7.87 inches minus those seams. We're looking at probably 7.5, 7.25 inch of space vertically here. So gonna be the same thing in terms of overall height here, but the pockets themselves on the back, all 4 of these are also the same size, and you can see they're just about 3 inches each, just a hair under, maybe 3 15/16. I don't know exactly what fraction that would be, but just a hair under there, maybe 3 7/8 inch might be an easier one. And so going into the depth, we're looking at about 4.5 inches deep. But again, most of the time, all of the gear that you're putting back here is going to be a little bit taller. You can get up to about that 7.25, 7.5 inch space. Onto our elastic loops, these are a little bit more shallow. They can also expand and go up into that vertical space, but we're looking at 3 3/4 inch deep. And then each of these are just under 2 inches, again probably 1 7/8 inch each, and then these slimmer ones are about 1 1/4 inch each. And so you have 4 of the slimmer, 4 of the wider elastic pockets. These ones are elastic, the back ones are wax canvas, so there's not as much give to them, but they are pretty generous. Obviously that Fastback fit in there no problem, could have fit something even thicker than that, no problem. And so they're pretty generous in how they're sewn, since the wax canvas isn't as stretchy as the elastic. But would love to hear your thoughts on this rolling mini tool roll down in the comments below. If you have one, what you use it for. I kind of have just kind of a random mismatch of stuff in there right now, but if you're someone who likes to build specialized kits, I think this would work really well for that. You can build a really robust like fire kit in there. You can build something for your bike, car emergency kits, tool kits, anything that really you want. And it works really well for that, because if you only have a little bit and building it up over time, you can start loading it out, and then as you add more and more gear, really expand it to as large as you want, but also can keep it as compact as you'd like if you're someone who's a little bit more minimal. But thanks again for watching. Definitely check this out over on the Roaring Fire website. They have a lot of cool gear, backpacks, pouches, and tool roll, stuff like that mostly. So definitely check them out if you're into that sort of thing. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, definitely consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and hitting that notification button. Also, do have a live show, Just a Tip, with Tim over at Tim's School of Fish that airs every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central. And we have a new episode coming out this coming Tuesday. This one's just going to be me and Tim, but would love to see you there. If you can't make it, obviously we do upload those so you can catch the replay as well. But I appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.